Okay, we're back. This is Sammy Riddle, Senior Partner with M33 Integrated. Thank you for joining our educational series. This is a monthly series that we started a number of years ago for the benefit of our clients and select prospects that are deep in the sales cycle with us. We've invited a few of those to attend as well. Our educational series topic today is fuel, a variable you can control. I'm joined today by Ken Waldron. He's our Director of Carrier Relations and Analytics out of our Greensboro Operations Center. I'm sure most of you have had the opportunity to meet him. He's the lucky one today to share some of the industry challenges, some of what the experts are saying, what some of the analysts are saying from a fuel standpoint. What's interesting here, as many of you know, it was recently released that for the first time in more than 60 years, the U.S. is selling more petroleum products than we buy. That's great news for our domestic oil and gas industry, but the rest of us won't reap those rewards. With U.S. oil production at 5.6 million barrels a day and the global oil demand at 87.8 million, the production is rising, but countries like China and others mean that global demand is outpacing supply. So the idea of gas, is it getting cheaper, is probably not going to happen anytime soon. Obviously the goal, the purpose of a webinar is to share with you the trends, the challenges, the obstacles that are in today's transportation environment. And we're not going to disappoint. We are going to lay out the fact that fuel is rising and the sky is falling and all the negative things that are associated with that. And my colleague, Ken Waldron, he gets to tell that story. We will follow up toward the end of this after sharing some of those analytics and some of those trends with some solutions. And we'll focus on really 6 main points that we believe you can take as action items from this webinar to discuss with your department, your staff, your colleagues, your supervisors, and some ideas and solutions that can be implemented following this. Thank you again for many of you attending this. How do I advance? Trying to advance the slide here just a second. A little technical difficulties here. Okay, again, thank you for attending, all of our clients and a few of our prospects. I'll hand it over to Ken with this last little comment here, last quote. I had the opportunity to attend the New Carolina TDL, Transportation Distribution and Logistics Summit last week, and one of the presenters finished his slide with this: transportation problems are not caused by a failure to create plans, but instead are due to a failure to implement these plans. Our goal today is to give you ideas, to give you tools, so that in 3 months from now, in 6 months from now, and it's probably inevitable, your CFO or your board of directors will come to you and say, fuel is impacting our profitability. Fuel cost and the fuel surcharges are narrowing our margins. What are you doing to handle this? What are you doing to combat this? And so we hope that today's tools, and we hope that today's ideas around technology and reporting will allow you to be in a position in 6 months from now for you to be able to answer to that board or answer to that CFO that these are the things that we were able to put in place back in late March this year. So Ken, I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sammy. And Sammy has tasked me with some of the doom and gloom, so I want to inject just a little bit of levity to the presentation here at the top. Obviously, gas prices is going to be very prominent in the news. It has been. This is an election year, so we'll continue to hear and see about this. It's a political issue, and with the hopes that towards the end of the year, perhaps there'll be some mitigation of the prices, but at this point, it is certainly an unknown. Job security, this gentleman isn't worried because about every 5 seconds he is changing the numbers up on the sign. So, from an employment standpoint, that's important. Also from a disposable cash for not only individual buyers and consumers, but also businesses as they look to invest and expand and hire. Rising fuel prices has a negative impact on all those issues. So let's talk about some key drivers of rising diesel and gasoline prices. We've identified approximately 5 points, first of which is demand. The recession depressed oil demand initially, which in turn depressed gas prices. However, with the global recovery gaining steam, more and more people are back to work, driving vehicles to do so. More companies are producing, meaning more freight. More trucks are active as well, meaning increased demand for goods. Second item, global pressures. Iran and Syria have been very prominent in the news. The Strait of Hormuz is a very key geographic point through which 20% of the world's oil passes, and that is close to Iran. So political upheaval in oil-producing countries like the Sudan, Nigeria, and Yemen, and the increased demand requirements of the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, China, and India, have increased their need to support their production goals. Third bullet is futures, anticipated behavior of speculators. Just today, oil prices stepped up again to $107 per barrel. While that is below the all-time high of $145 per barrel back in July 2008, it is still continuing to rise. The supply has been constrained, and that is pushing prices up. And the weakness of the dollar has not helped as well throughout the globe. Fourth item is the time of year. We're coming through spring break time right now, and summer vacation is going to be upon us shortly. As more vehicles hit the road for vacations, that also has an impact on driving up prices. And finally, reduction in U.S. refining capacity. Since September 2011, 2 refineries in the Philadelphia area and 1 major Caribbean export refinery have closed. So again, constraining supply. Graphically taking a look at this, a look back, and contemplating how we go forward, this is a 2-year snapshot going back to May 2011. The price was $4.12 a gallon, and just last week up to $4.14 per gallon, the highest since July 2008. So between March 12 and January 2011, a 24.3% increase. Obviously, the climb is up and to the right. Just a breakdown on regions. Again, upper right-hand corner, the increase about 23.5 cents per gallon year over year. And for those clients and prospects which have West Coast operations, it's even more acute with a 32.7 cent per gallon increase. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sammy, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the best practice tools to employ for your businesses.
Ken, thank you. One of the first things we hear in communicating with our clients from a monthly or from a quarterly standpoint, or even from a prospecting standpoint, is, hey, what about the idea of a fuel cap? And before we talk about really fuel and where it is as a component or a percentage in your freight cost, this is a good slide that just really breaks it down and makes it very simple. And most of you recognize these cost per pound type graphs that we produce, again, from a monthly or quarterly standpoint. And in this case here, you see in the fourth quarter, 6.5 cents is my transportation cost per pound. And of that, 1.2 cents is made up of fuel. And so, again, I just want to establish out of the gate that from a reporting standpoint, from an analytics standpoint, it's critical that we continue to break out and report fuel as a separate component to total transportation cost. I mentioned a second ago the fuel caps, and we've heard these discussions before. We've been involved with these. Many of us have attended other webinars, seminars, conferences that have talked about fuel caps. And some of you have probably attended some of these as well, such as through SMC. And I'm not saying it for every application, but in most of the ones that we have evaluated, the idea of a fuel cap has a negative effect on total transportation costs. It actually increases the total impact. And an example of that is if a carrier comes to the table and says, okay, I'll accept a 5% or 10% or whatever fuel cap is in place, and we'll make it up on a 1-point discount increase, if you will, from an LTL standpoint. I don't mean to get into the weeds here, but a 1 point is equivalent to a 3.5% rate increase, and that's quite significant. And so even one of our clients that we reviewed this with last year, they they had about a 32% increase in their total fuel year over year of 2011 versus 2010. Of the total impact of that 32% in fuel, it affected their transportation spend by 1.6%. Accepting the 32% increase as a variable cost, they were able to maintain or even reduce their discount models that they had with the LTL carriers. Had they taken even a 1-point discount increase and tried to cap the fuel, it would have doubled the impact to the total transportation increase. And so, again, the point is, and again, this is not for every application, but in most cases, it's smarter as a business, and what we would recommend as your strategic partner is to control fuel from a variable standpoint and use the tools, the leverage, the lane densities, etc., to manage the line haul so that they can be separated and reported and even pass through, as we'll discuss here in just a little bit. So this is a good example of, I'm going to share this one rather quickly, but this is a client that, let me back up here. This is a client that had a fuel cap in place before we put a partnership, before we implemented a partnership with M33. And what we were able to, from an analytical standpoint, look back 4 quarters and understand the benefit of moving from a cap to a variable index. You can see in the 4th quarter that they spent $192,000 on their lane haul freight cost, and in that same time period, they spent $36,000 on the fuel. Now, had we not implemented those changes, they would have, with the fuel cap, they would have only spent $13,000 in fuel. And you say, well, $13,000 is a lot less than 36. Yes, but in order keeping or negotiating the line haul rates down, you can see that they avoided a combination of the $36,000 in fuel and the $42,000 in the discount difference. I think this was an example of 2 points. But overall, they were able to contain costs significantly by, again, controlling fuel as a variable and using the other tools and the dynamics around line haul negotiations. So I just wanted to start off in discussing tools that a lot of times the fuel cap and the idea around a fuel cap comes to the table first, and we wanted an opportunity to kind of share our experience around that. The focus today in the 6 different ideas that we've opened up with is primarily around technology and intelligence. And when we say intelligence, we're talking about our monthly meetings, or our quarterly meetings, excuse me, our monthly reports. For some of you clients, you receive daily reports or weekly reports around certain metrics, certain KPIs that are important to your business. So intelligence kind of incorporates the whole reporting dynamic that we provide. In technology, we're going to discuss over the next few slides mode options, optimization, and rating tools, and then intelligence around procurement indexing, volume maximization, baseline terms, and the ability for upcharges. So if you'll notice on the next few slides, we have these labeled accordingly to kind of keep up with here. We're talking about, when we talk about mode options, this is just a good kind of 30,000-foot view of rail. And you can see here, relatively speaking, from a cost standpoint, since 1981, rail rates have increased by only 5%. It's interesting to see some of the other commodity increases. And our good old dependable post office over here at 149% increase. Rail, from a efficiency standpoint, there's some information here at the bottom of the slide. To me, it's a little bit easier to share the efficiency of train by stating that a train can move 435 tons 1 mile on a single gallon of fuel, versus a truck would move 130 tons per mile on a gallon. And so you see about a 4% efficiency gain on rail. And again, rail is not the right solution for every lane, as you well know. And it's not the right solution sometimes based on your customer dynamics or customer requirements. But in today's environment, with the increase in fuel, it really should be part of the equation. It should be part of the discussion based on certain lanes, based on geographic synergies, customer flexibility, if you will. Please make rail a part of the discussion.
Those are great points, Sammy. And another issue for our listeners is that 5-10 years ago, it used to be an intermodal lane had to be 1,000 or 1,500 miles. that has been reduced significantly, actually in half. There are many lanes now, 5, 6, 7, 800 miles, that can be run intermodally just like they can on truck.
Thank you, Ken. When we talk about optimization, as many of you know that utilize our systems today, whether it's the new Blackbeard system that has more of these tools available or your own legacy, and we're obviously having migration discussions to get you on the newest version. Optimization means a lot of things for a lot of people, but at the base of it, we want to discuss, again, really from a macro standpoint, the benefit of technology and what that does from a cost reduction, an overall cost reduction standpoint, and again, as a tool to combat the increases in fuel. This is a good slide to understand that when you see trucks on the road, whether you're passing trucks or trucks are passing you, 1 out of every 10 of those trucks, they're empty. They have no freight in the trailer. They're returning to a domicile location, or they're between a delivery and a pickup. The next graph shows that those that do have freight on them, from a utilization standpoint, are only being 60% utilized properly. And there's 40% waste factor on the 90% of the trucks that do have freight on there. So in theory, if you eliminate the empty miles and you utilize the trailer space 100%, you can move all the freight in North America on 50% of the existing fleet. And so this is an enormous opportunity and a great target, if you will, for not only M33 as your partner, but our relationship, our ability to communicate and share information early in the process, so that smart routing, so that collaboration, consolidations, all of these optimization tools can be maximized. And this is a great, slide to understand from a U.S. perspective, because we're constantly hearing news about tight capacity, about the congestion of the interstates, the lack of infrastructure. To me, this is a very loud and clear message that technology is one of the solutions that should be maximized over the next few years, and from a long-term standpoint, maximizing the fleet and the infrastructure they have in place to fill those trucks up. So again, this is just from an overview standpoint where technology plays into factor, or at least the optimization side. Most of you recognize this screen. This is the rating or routing screen within the Blackbeard system. It's a similar screen that most of you are used to in the legacy program. While a lot of our clients from an enterprise standpoint are integrated with the ERP system, this rules-based engine is already in place, so that based on the dynamics of the order, the requirements of the customer, in this case you can see here under transit days, if 4 days is acceptable, I can quickly see my base rate and today's fuel surcharge and make the smartest decision as needed for the customer at that moment. So again, our enterprise clients that are integrated, this is sort of an automated tool that runs in the background. And for other clients that use this more as an information tool in order to make decisions, we just want to, again, put this out there front and center, that this live dynamic rating engine is used to help make smart decisions. You want to add something to this, Ken?
Absolutely. Another takeaway that's key from this particular slide, Sammy, is the fuel surcharge column over on the right. In this particular case, it's a fixed percentage of 16.5%. So as the line haul rate continues to go up, there's a corresponding increase on the fuel surcharge side as well.
Moving from technology tools and options ideas over to reporting intelligence. We look at one of the tools being around procurement and indexing. We could have an entire webinar around the procurement and utilization of the right index, if you will. But we're talking about negotiating from a procurement, from an RFQ standpoint, and implementing best practices, the types of tools that we use in negotiating with carriers. You have the fuel surcharge index models that most of you are aware of, understanding what the percentage difference is versus another index that's based on a fuel cost per mile. And obviously the significant difference based on long haul versus short haul. Am I using a percentage fuel index versus a per mile? And then, of course, the obvious around the energy cost and the mode fuel surcharge indexes according to LTL versus truckload versus intermodal. Ken, if you don't mind, say a few things here around the negotiation piece.
Sure. Just for the listeners, I mean, you want to be thinking about the value proposition that your freight brings to a carrier. Is it no-touch freight? Is it live load, unload, quick, easy on and off? Is it skidded? Is it non-hazmat? Can you provide the carrier networks with backhaul opportunities to feed their head haul markets where they need capacity? Those are the type of things you need to be thinking about selling to a carrier.
Moving on to volume maximization as a tool within the reporting and analytics. This is just a good screenshot. Most of you recognize this screen where we report the cost per pound of your freight into different weight breaks. And so you can see here from 500 to 1,000 pounds, transportation cost is 16 cents per pound. If I jump over to the 5,000 to 10,000 pound, that drops all the way down to 6.6 cents per pound. So again, just to put in perspective, cost per pound according to weight break is an important factor in transportation management. The next slide gives us a little more detail, and this is interesting. If you look at the top graph up here, 1 to 500 pounds, you can see that the total transportation cost is 33 cents per pound. The fuel, because they are minimums, and based on the line haul type rating or rate bases that the carriers use, the fuel in this case is 5.2 cents per pound. Well, if I look at my transportation, if I look at the behavior of my customers, and I can, on certain customers, by certain minimums, if you will, that you can put in place from a communication standpoint, if I can bump that to 1,000 to 2,000 pounds, you can see the significant difference that it has on the total transportation cost. So in this case, it drops down to 15.5 cents per pound on total transportation. But look what it does to fuel. You can see we went from 5.2 cents per pound on fuel down to 2.4. So you have a 50% reduction in your transportation cost per pound when utilizing certain volume minimums. And again, you guys have seen this before. You know the impact of it. And I just think that in today's environment, with fuel where it is, this is a discussion, this is a chart, this is a graph that we need to be discussing through the organization. The next topic, the baseline terms and upcharge. This is the last one here, and this one has, again, a whole nother webinar if you wanted to around these type of ideas. But just from a 3-bullet point standpoint, I guess, the different types of pass-throughs that can be created from the M33 technology and exported in a value-added type automated report, or different ideas around a fuel baseline pass-through, a fuel flat percentage, and this is usually incorporated with the cost or the sales activity around the cost of your product that goes to your consumers or to your customers, as calculating that as a pass-through, and then a minimum order upcharge. And so in order for these type of programs to work, you have to have a baseline. And a baseline, the best way to incorporate a baseline is to understand what, for example, look at your top 10 customers and evaluate when the terms of your products from a delivered pricing, again, we're talking about terms delivered, when those were negotiated with your customers for the product that you're selling them, what was the fuel at that point in time? What was the cost for diesel per gallon? And this is a good example here. It's going all the way back to 2007. You can see that it was probably around $2.60 per gallon. And and the stake in the ground here from a graphic standpoint, you can see is around, say, April, June 2010, where diesel was $3 a gallon. Well, if you negotiated your product from a delivered standpoint when fuel was at $3 a gallon, and today you're experiencing over $4, that's a 30% swing in just the energy cost, or just the fuel cost. And if you're not passing that along properly or communicating that properly, then you're taking the entire hit on that increase in fuel. And so again, it's about understanding, and again, to really go after this, it's smart. And what we normally do with our clients is, let's look at your top 10 customers, your top 20 customers. Where is the activity there? Where do you feel like you're taking it on the chin, if you will, from a fuel standpoint? Looking back in the terms with the sales department, with the purchasing department, understanding when those terms are negotiated, establishing that baseline, and then what reports, what analytics can M33 produce from a daily standpoint or monthly standpoint or whatever in order for you to understand and pass on that delta. Here's a quick example here. This is a daily report from one of our clients that was established, I think, around, I hope you can see this right column. It's not visible on my screen. But at the time that the baseline was established here, this was pretty soon after the huge increases in 2008. We were able to talk about these ideas and communicate these initiatives. And for this customer, I think we established the baseline around $3.10 a gallon for diesel. And so what this automated report does today is it sends to the accounting department of the client a daily by lane report of each shipment by their sales order number, which is not on here, as well as some other details. Obviously, there's no such thing as Timbuktu, Tennessee. I don't think so. But the report shows that on the baseline fuel surcharge column, that is the fuel as if the diesel were $3.10 a gallon. And then the next column, the fuel surcharge upcharge, that is the delta between the 310 and the 414 today. And again, this is being utilized by one of our clients, and I think they're on the call today, in fact, where this is being passed on through the accounting that can be. Now, whether or not they're doing it, and I think the last indication was they were doing this about, for the total volume, probably about 20-25%. And again, 100% is all probably impossible based on your customer. But, I mean, even at 25%, if that can be passed on because the baseline was properly established, then that is money that you're not losing. That is money that's being passed on. And if this fuel thing continues where it is, and some of the forecasts, even have greater numbers than what Ken shared with us, then again, you're able to maintain your margins or maintain the profitability and take the variable in fuel, control it, and pass it on to the customer. So this is a sample report. Again, most of you have probably seen these things. We've, over the past probably 15 minutes, we've focused our time around these 6 ideas, 3 around technology, 3 around intelligence. I encourage you to reach out to your account manager, those that we're in discussions with that are hopefully future customers. Look forward to following up with you through the business development manager to see if some of these make sense. But again, thank you for your time. We appreciate your attendance, appreciate the investment in time. Thank you for attending this monthly webinar. We have another one scheduled for sometime around the 3rd week of April. I should know what the topic is. I apologize I don't, but I can promise you it'll, I'm not presenting, so I know it'll be more interesting than mine here today. Again, thank you. If you would like additional information, you're welcome to reach out to Gina Sass. You see her contact information here, as well as your account manager or BDM for additional data and information here. Thank you.